Hello everyone, my name is Dustin, and for my documentary presentation I have chosen to do Super Size Me by Morgan Spurlock. First and foremost, some background on why I chose this one. This documentary was released back in 2004, so a little dated, about 18 years old, but at the time I was actually working in fast food. I was working at McDonald's at the time. It was a huge deal when this documentary first came out. I heard of it. We even took off the supersize menu, made some changes, tried to push a more healthy menu and everything like that, but I never actually watched it myself, all right? I could relate to some of the material, knowing the general gist of what it was about. When COVID first started, due to some work and personal circumstances, I spent a lot of time eating fast food instead of cooking, and I definitely felt the results, so it made it kind of an interesting documentary to go ahead and take a look at. Now, for my analysis, I want to first go over the ethos, logos, and pathos in Super Size Me. The audience for this documentary are American citizens, as is people are well aware we have an issue with obesity and stuff like that. Even back in 2004, everyone knew about that, right? So Mr. Spurlock's documentary invokes ethos and logos by showing you firsthand what the McDiet can do to you. We first see and receive information that confirms that he is completely healthy when he starts out. He visits several doctors, they all give him a clean bill of health, tell him he's doing great, all right? Further ethos and logos are invoked by witnessing over the course of the documentary how the eating habits are affecting him. They're destroying his personal relationship with his girlfriend. He's feeling sluggish. He reports depression, things of that sort. We also receive, like I mentioned, testimony from his girlfriend, who's a vegan chef, about how he's showing a lack of energy. He's lethargic. Their sex life is affected, things like that. He goes in for regular weigh-ins. The doctors are noticing that he's putting on weight and everything like that, right? Through all of this, the doctors are actually shocked at just how damaged his health is. His overall condition has deteriorated rapidly over the course of just 1 month, right? The whole point of this is actually the pathos, where it's trying to make you angry and appalled at this. Like, we're putting this stuff in our bodies, right? Like, this is incredibly damaging stuff. All right. However, was this documentary biased? Mr. Spurlock says that he performed the experiment in response to a lawsuit from two teenage girls who were blaming McDonald's, at least on part, for their obesity. And around the same time, the U.S. Surgeon General actually put out a notice of epidemic regarding obesity. This is when it was really starting to get into like the news, the public sphere, people realizing like, hey, obesity is starting to become a major health problem here, right? And while Mr. Spurlock was surely attempting to get the word out on the whole thing, people who maybe really weren't paying so much attention about how unhealthy the McDiet was, he clearly went to further links and what I consider self-destructive methods to try and kind of exuberate and make the end result as absolutely shocking as possible. Even 18 years ago, we knew a lot of the things that Mr. Spurlock does in this film were going to lead to the end result. He essentially cuts down on exercise entirely, claiming that the normal American at the time would take maybe 5,000 steps in a day. Wouldn't go to the gym or anything like that. I work a desk job for a living at a hospital. That was I'm pretty sure a little bit more steps than that, unless you really just aren't moving a whole lot, right? Nothing in what his argument was going required him to do that. Okay, he was just trying to make it as shocking and, I guess, really kind of push down exactly how damaging the lifestyle is. However, the whole point of this movie is it's called Super Size Me. It's about McDonald's and their diet. So he didn't necessarily need to go to that extent, right? As such, when you take all of that in consideration, the fact that he's ignoring common sense as part of the experiment in the documentary, I do have to say it's biased. I will give them credit in the fact that he presents all information and facts as truthful, but there is some hyperbole there. It's definitely exaggerated. Okay? My thoughts on the argument in the film itself. Like I said, I do believe that it came from the right place. It has a positive overall impact, but a lot of it really just ignores some common sense, right? Like I mentioned before, Mr. Spurlock forgoes exercise almost entirely besides his walking commute in New York. He takes a supersize upgrade every time it's ever offered to him. His intent is to make sure that people are realizing that this is the marketing of McDonald's here, but in the process, he's overeating to the point that he actually even pukes. And he becomes essentially addicted to overeating, which is an incredibly horrible, I shouldn't say incredibly horrible, but it's a very unhealthy habit. He's eating more than he needs to just to make this point, right? We're led to believe the entirety of this experiment is explained out to the doctors. We get to see him meet with a nutritionist, a gastrologist, a general practice doctor, a cardiologist, and they all give him a clean bill of health. But to be quite frank, with some common sense, just looking into it, one of the doctors actually specifically says, "I don't think you'll have any issues except maybe some mild to moderate weight gain," right? I feel like if the doctors knew the full extent of that, I have a hard time believing that any actual practice doctor would make a statement like that. I mean, he's taking multiple methods of bad health behaviors here and compounding it over an entire month. And to think the worst that was going to happen to him was some weight gain. When you really start analyzing the video like that, it kind of takes you out. You have to have a sense of disbelief to just take all of this as it is. As soon as you start thinking about it, you start wondering about his argument, right? It reinforces the view, essentially, that this document is biased. When Mr. Spurlock set out to make this documentary, he had an end goal in mind. All right. My final overall evaluation is that it's a good film. I do encourage people to watch it, even if it's a little dated now. It's almost 2 decades. However, I really think it should be taken as more of a thought-provoking entertainment film as opposed to educational. As I stated earlier, he rightfully brings attention to McDonald's marketing issues, specifically like with children. However, he inadvertently in the process makes a strong point for personal choice and personal responsibility. He's clearly taking aim at McDonald's and the health of their food, their marketing schemes and such. But as I stated earlier, once you start considering his own personal actions that he takes, a large point of that damage from a common sense perspective could probably be avoided. I do know, I have not actually seen them myself, but there's at least 2 other documentaries that have done a McDiet, and they included things such as portion balancing, not overeating, and actual exercising, and they did not have incredibly damaging health effects by the ends of it. I believe in the case of Mr. Spurlock, he gained something like 26 to 27 pounds by the end of the month, which is obviously, that's a lot, that's ridiculous. But he didn't, like I said, he did not take any methods to essentially make it healthier and easier on his body. Finally, I think probably the most shocking thing that really kind of really made me think that this really isn't such an informational, educational film in the grand scheme of things is that Mr. Spurlock actually mentions on the advice of the doctors in the very beginning that he's going to keep a food log. He has done so, and after 18 years, as of most recent information that I looked up, he has still not released that information. So he clearly kept a log, but for some reason he's not actually releasing it. So once again, I think it's a great film. I encourage people to see it, but as with many things in life, take it with a grain of salt. Thank you guys very much.